Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
Absolutely nothing, but there is something going on this Saturday at UFC 315, all the way in Canada. We've got Belal Muhammad taking on Jack Della Maddalena. And as always, the Ground and Pound podcast is going to start off with the early prelims, head all the way to the main event, giving you our picks, predictions, and analysis of all of these matchups. Carlos, you ready to get into the prelims?
Let's do it.
So first up, we have Brad Katona, the Canadian, taking on Bekzan Almakhan. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
I took Almakhan in this one. Katona looks good, but for some reason, he's just not like a big finisher. He's defensively pretty sound. Offensively, he stays busy, but doesn't look like his strikes actually does the damage that should get him the win all the time when he tends to take a step up. And even on that competitive level, just a little lower, that he's always fighting guys that are now coming in, entry level guys. Almakhan, I got to go with him because he was a dog when it came to taking that fight. It was his debut fight against Umar Nurmagomedov. It went to a decision. He had a good showing of himself. Now, he did get dominated pretty much in the fight. But what he did show was that in some scrambles, he can get out from under Umar, which is actually very hard to do. Not a lot of people can. He showed that he was game on the feet and gained the respect of Umar on the feet. And that's when Umar's like, I've got to take this to the ground to win this fight. I can't stand with this kid because he was throwing some heat. The performance, in my opinion, I think it made him look very well. And I think that I don't think he's actually going to finish Katona. And I just think he's going to probably pull off a decision. But I think it's going to be a very decisive decision. And I think it's going to go on Almakhan's way.
Yeah, two for Almakhan here. I thought that the showing against Umar was pretty impressive, and he did drop Umar in that first round. He was able to get off bottom from a superior wrestler. He took that fight on very short notice, as Carlos said, and made a good account of himself. And you have to feel like somewhat that the UFC is kind of rewarding him here. I feel like with Brad Katona. Brad Katona, the two-time Ultimate Fighter winner, obviously there is real accomplishments inside the UFC. All of his notable wins have been against low-level competition. In his last fight against Gene Matsumoto, he came out. He was a little bit more wild on the feet. He was a little bit more aggressive, less technical, and more just getting into a bar fight. And he still lost that fight. We've seen him in previous fights. He's tried to mix in heavy grappling. He's lost that fight. When he's been technical and measured, he's lost that fight. So I just think here he's just outmatched. I think that Bakzat or however you pronounce his name, the Kazakhstani fighter here. I just think that on the feet, he's very technical. He has a nice snappy kick, really nice hooks, nice timing on his shots. And he has that kind of like when you see some of the Russians sometimes with their kickboxing, everything is kind of just where it's supposed to be. It looks nice on the feet. And I also believe he can mix in takedowns. So two fairly confident picks here for Alkama. I can't pronounce his name at all, but Almakhan. Here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And I just want to add as well, with Almakhan in this style matchup, I don't necessarily think that he will mix in the grappling because I do think he is the superior striker. But I do like the fact that if this fight does go longer, I can trust his cardio and his durability, which we haven't always seen from Katona in his fights. That he does take a punch well, but he does get dropped, he does get hit a lot, and he does wear damage throughout his career. So two confident picks here for Almakhan or blah, blah, blah. I can't even pronounce this guy's name, and I'm not going to try again. Next up, we have Daniel Santos taking on Li Zhongyang. And I have to mention as well, Daniel Santos taking this fight on short notice. Normally fights at 135. And Lee was meant to fight Gavin Tucker, I do believe. So this fight taking place at 145. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
Well, Santos is a tough guy, and he's got a good chin on him. You've seen him get hurt numerous times, and able to make a little bit of a comeback of it. Solid strike and good jiu-jitsu. He can work off his back if he's taken down. Problem is sometimes he'll let himself stay down. I hope that's not the case. Uh, Lee's got fast hands, fast strikes in general. He'll attack the body. Solid jiu-jitsu. I'm going with Lee because of the step up in the weight class. I think that Lee's got the size advantage, the power advantage, and even though he's a smaller guy, Lee does have the speed advantage in this one, and I think those strikes are going to come out lightning fast. And although Daniel Santos, tough guy, out of shoot the box, everybody knows they throw some killers in there. I just think Lee's got his number in this one.
Yeah, the short notice and also upper weight class worries me here a little bit for Santos. And it wasn't that long removed. He was supposed to fight Davey Grant, and he was pulled from that fight. He wasn't even able to weigh in due to a medical issue. So who knows what the issues going on with Santos that he had? I don't know if it was an injury. Who knows what the issue moving forward was and what he's going to look like here in this matchup and why he's taking this one at 145 instead of his usual weight class at 135. It does have to be mentioned, he is 2-1 inside the UFC. Santos with his win over John Castaneda and Johnny Munoz. So not necessarily bad wins, but I'm with Carlos here on this one. I like Lee in this style matchup. He is the Korean Tiger, one of the cooler nicknames inside the UFC, road to UFC winner as well. I like his counter striking. I like the fact that he stalks people on the feet. He does carry power. He does rip to the body. He does look to mix in takedowns as well. I think that'll be best served here against Santos on short notice. Mix in the wrestling. Let's get him tired early. He does possess good takedown defense as well. And like Carlos said, Daniel Santos is very, very aggressive, not just on the feet, but just generally being a shooter box fighter. They are generally quite aggressive. I do hope that Lee stays technical here. He doesn't get into a wild striking exchange like he did with Haider Emil in his last fight where he got knocked out. I think that was just him trading in the pocket, hoping he landed first. It wasn't very technical. I think that's really the only way that Santos is going to be able to win in this striking matchup. So give me Lee as well to get it done here on the feet and maybe mix in some wrestling. And next up, we have Bruno Silva taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. You going with the Canadian or the Brazilian?
Listen, man, I got no problem with Canada. You know what I mean? I got my Pookie. She's from Canada. It's a beautiful thing. She's a sweetheart. I cannot go with Marc-Andre Barriault in this one. I'm going to go with Bruno Silva. My whole reasoning is this: if the fight gets a little wild early or late, whenever this fight takes place, I think he comes in a little reckless. He may get stuck once or twice, and then he starts unleashing some wild strikes, which leaves him very much open. Bruno Silva is going to be the guy that will engage in that exchange. One of the big deals that I got is that I think that Marc-Andre's chin is starting to fade. Before, he was known for being tough, bullish, coming forward. He could take a shot, give a shot. Now it looks like the taking the shot is starting to come down a couple levels. The power bar has been drained a little bit over time, and that's what happens when you want to play that game. It's a tough game to play, but when your defense is, my chin can take a shot, that's just what's going to happen, especially around 35 years old. I was going to say it starts to happen around 34, 35. That's when it is. And, Bruno Silva's a tough guy, and he's taken a lot of shots over his career too. I just think that he's going to find the opening to exploit on Marc-Andre.
Yeah, I had to talk to Carlos about this one before we went live. I was very unsure, but you can't never feel confident about picking a guy like Bruno Silva. I mean, the 6 of his last 7 fights he's lost, which is really hard to get behind as far as a pick's concerned. But I'm also going to pick Bruno Silva here. I'm right with Carlos. I don't trust Marc-Andre Barriault's chin anymore. His last 2 losses, it might even be 3 losses in a row now. 2 of them have both come by a knockout. Against Dustin Stoltzfus, and I forget the other. I think it was Joe Pyfer. He got knocked out in both of those 2 fights, and I just think the power bar's been sitting on the shelf too long. It's getting a little bit stale now. It's out of date, and I think that Bruno Silva's power is going to be enough here. And it's hard to be confident in neither of these 2 guys. That the chin check of Marc-Andre Barriault could happen at any point with Silva. 20 of his 23 wins coming via knockout. That usually was the MO on Silva, is you have to be wary of his hands and his kicks. The guy, possesses a lot of power, but he's had some pretty poor performances too, recently, as I mentioned. So hard to trust either guy. I just trust that Silva's power is gonna, he's gonna find a shot at some point in the fight. I think if Marc-Andre Barriault is smart, I think he wrestles here. I think he takes Silva down, which we've seen happen in the past. But I think Silva ultimately finds the chin at some point. And unfortunately, the Canadian doesn't get a win in front of his home support here. But two for Silva here as the underdog. And next up, we have Navajo Stirling taking on Ivan Erslan. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this light heavyweight matchup?
This one is it's a little rocky for me because Erslan, he doesn't have a lot of movement, okay, but he does have some pop. He has solid striking, but a lot of his fights have ended in the first round. You know what I mean? So he doesn't have a lot of rounds in fighting. So I don't know what happens. I've seen some of his fights have gone the distance, but it's few and far between. And I don't necessarily know how those fights looked at the time. But so I can't really trust that. So I'm going with Navajo Stirling. Now, Stirling is he's pretty relaxed, throws heavy shots, doesn't put everything into it, but he's got another gear. As we've seen, once he knows you're hurt, he can turn it up, come out a little bit better. He's throwing knees, he's grabbing the back of your head in the plum clinch, he's throwing bombs from outside. And I think that might be a little bit too much for Erslan if he can't get out of the way. He doesn't move off center. He stands in one spot. He comes right at you. He doesn't have any head movement. Doesn't keep a high guard. I think that's pretty good for Stirling here to get the win in this one.
Yeah, two for Stirling here. Trains out of City Kickboxing, which obviously we know is not necessarily on the rise right now. A couple of those guys are struggling, but he's got all the training partners there for a striking exchange here against Ivan Erslan. And one of the things that I will mention about Stirling that I do really like is that he is very composed for a guy that is only 6-0. You normally see, composed fighters, as they get a little bit older on into their career and they've had a few more MMA fights. Stirling seems fairly composed, fairly light on his feet. He throws in elbows and knees, which I do like. He also has 22 professional kickboxing fights in which he went 22-0. So creditable in terms of the kickboxing, still very new to MMA. But I do like him on the feet. My only real kind of question mark or slander to him is that he wasn't able to knock out or finish Tuco Tokos in his last fight, which he's proven to be a human punching bag. So he did have him hurt in that previous fight, a couple of times, but wasn't able to get the finish. So that would probably be my only real critique on him. We haven't necessarily seen how he handles the grappling, but you have to believe that City Kickboxing is going to have good takedown defense for him. A lot of those guys are quite famous for having good cage defense and good takedown defense. But overall, Ivan, in his last fight when he fought against Cutelaba, very, very muscular upper body build. And I think, to be honest with you, he carries power early. Like Carlos said, a lot of his fights are in the first round. They tend to finish inside the first round. When they go longer, I think he tends to slow. I think he tends to, lack a little bit of pop as the fight goes on, whether that be the clinching or the wrestling. His arms just get sort of worn down and he loses that sting. He did move over to American Top Team, which I think will serve him well throughout his career. But I think in this style matchup, Stirling's calf kicks are going to be a big factor here. Erslan is very heavy on his feet, on his lead leg. I think Stirling chews up that lead leg, and that's going to set up the rest of his strikes. So give me Stirling here and a confident pick to get it done on the feet. And next up, speaking of Ion Cutelaba, we have Ion Cutelaba, the Hulk, taking on Modestas Bukauskas. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
I ended up going with Cutelaba in this one. He can be a bit reckless at times. And, he fights like the Hulk. He'll just come in angry and a little wild. But he still has the ability to bring the fight to the ground and settle himself, look for submissions, definitely looks for ground and pound more often than that. And on the feet, yes, he does get a little reckless, but he does move. So he's not just a sit and duck the entire time. One thing that gets me about Bukauskas is the fact that he trains with some big guys. And they're not just, big guys that he's beaten on. There's some like high-level big guys. I want to say it's over at what's the name of the big guy here we're talking about?
Tom Aspinall.
Tom Aspinall's gym, yep, and he's got some big boys in there, and he's always bringing in bigger boys in there so they can work. So I don't know. I mean, Bukauskas looked very good in his last fight. Granted, he was fighting somebody that uh, looked like a deer in headlights as soon as the bell rang, but I think that that is going to cause some problems. That maybe he's a little bit rangier, having fighting guys like that, and having sparring guys like that all the time, and I just feel Cutelaba is going to be a little gritty, and he's going to get in his face, and that's probably going to make the difference in this matchup.
Yeah, this one's been tough for me. I've flip-flopped on this one a few times, but Cutelaba to me has always been a bit of a wild man. But in his last two fights, he's shown a little bit more composure. So that's actually why I'm going to pick him here. Former European Sambo champion. We don't necessarily see too much of the grappling from Cutelaba. We always like to see him throw down. He's always game and very tough. And in his last fight against Aiemann, he was able to mix in a few takedowns. He was able to land the better strikes. And he always does this playing possum thing he's done since his fight against Ankalaev, where he pretends to get rocked to kind of draw you in and then throws wild. So that's kind of become one of his trademarks. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bukauskas fell for it here. Bukauskas, as Carlos mentioned, does train over there with Tom Aspinall, Mick Parkin, and some of the heavyweights over there in the north of England. So getting some good sparring in there, some good training. But yeah, it does have to be noted that Bukauskas' last two wins have come against some pretty low-level guys. So it's hard to really trust him here as far as a step up in competition here against Cutelaba. And I know a lot of people do count out Cutelaba purely because of the fact that they know he's a wild man and a lot of his fights can be coin flips. But Bukauskas has kind of been cracked a few times, even in fights that he's gone on to win. And the opponents that he's fought haven't been able to get him out of there. He's been able to kind of grapple with them and, take them down. Like the Marcin Prachnio fight, he was winning, and then Prachnio was able to land a crazy head kick up against the fence. And he was able to take Prachnio down and control him. Well, I don't think that's going to be available here for Cutelaba. I think Cutelaba can either win the striking exchanges and find the chin of Bukauskas, which he does tend to be the kind of more plodding heavyweight here out of the two for Bukauskas. I think Cutelaba is going to be a little bit more polished, a little bit more seasoned. If he wants to mix in the grappling, I think he'll be the better grappler. So give me Cutelaba here to get it done. And I do think Bukauskas is pretty decent. I do think that he's looked better since moving to that gym with Tom Aspinall. But I just think this is a step up in competition a little bit too much here. So give me Cutelaba to get it done. And next up, we have Jessica Andrade taking on a ground and pound favorite here in Jasudavicius. She is one of the ground and pound favorites. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carl. I see you picking the Jasmine train this week to get it done, or are we going with the Brazilian?
Listen, man, same thing. I'm a fan. You're a fan. I'm going to go with Jasudavicius, okay? She's tough. Fights a very wrestle heavy grappling, game plan. She's got a lot of height and reach in this one, so I'm hoping she's able to keep herself out of trouble. From those big hooks that Andrade likes to wing when she's in close. Get Andrade against the cage, land some shots, some elbows, some knees, something to distract her while she gets a takedown. Maybe she's gonna hit some type of throw, you know what I mean? Like some type of hip toss. And I would love to see her get her down, because I think when she's down, she's going to be able to control her on the ground. Defensively, she's gotten better in her fights, but she's not fighting anybody like she fought in the Natália Silva fight. Silva, she's an animal. She's incredibly fast. She's got good, sharp strikes. They're quick, they're short. Not a lot of fat on them. Andrade is not one of those types. She doesn't have fast feet. She doesn't have fast hands. They are quick when they're coming, because she throws punches in bunches, but she's got to get close enough to make it effective. And I hope Jasmine can do something to keep her off. And all I can say is, Jazz, we're going with you. Double neck. Get it done.
Yeah, two for Jasmine here for me as well. I think the wrestling's going to be the deciding factor. And Jessica Andrade, as she's seen in the past, that I've talked about it in the past, that she recently, maybe in the last year or so, went through a divorce, and she seems to me that she's trying to fight in order to make money for that situation as opposed to her love for fighting in itself. Obviously, she's always live. She's always got powerful hands. Obviously can find the chin at any point. And she has been on kind of a little bit of a landslide as far as her performances recently. And the thing with Jasmine is that she has kind of been ascending. Apart from that Natália Silva loss that Carlos mentioned, she has looked pretty good. She has been able to get fights to the ground. She does have good top control. And I do think Jessica Andrade is somebody who, if you kind of get her out of the first round, you wrestle her, you clinch with her, you get the pressure going forward. I think the small frame of her where she swings wild will benefit Jasmine. She can duck right underneath those big shots, get the takedowns, and hopefully be able to control Jessica Andrade here early in round one. And I think that'll set her up for rounds 2 and 3. Now, the thing that I'm concerned about is if Jasmine's going backwards and Andrade is pressuring forwards, that's going to take away those takedowns a little bit. Andrade might be able to go to the body or land some sort of uppercut as Jasmine comes in, and that power is always live. It does worry me a little bit, but give me Jasmine here. I think the wrestling's going to be enough, and I think that the Canadian faithful are going to be in her corner. They're going to be rooting for the hometown girl. I think that's going to play a big factor here, and if she does kind of have to face some adversity, I think that's going to be the deciding factor. So give me Jasmine with a wrestle-heavy game plan here against Andrade. And next up, I believe this is the featured prelim. We have Charles Radtke taking on Mike Malott, and I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
All right, Malott is very, he's a very solid fighter. He's very strong early. He's got good technique. He's got good wrestling. His submission game is very strong, but I think I don't know, he's a little stiff, and maybe that's why he tends to fade a little bit as the rounds go on. There was a fight he was in with Trevin Giles, and offensively, he didn't have a lot of output, and he was still tired, and that's the one that got to me. I was like, against Neil Magny, he was kind of going pretty heavy with the strikes, but he did get very, very early grappling. But against Giles, he wasn't really going crazy, and he started. You could see it. His face got red, and chest was going up and down. He was breathing heavy, and then the technique starts to get a little sloppy. In this one, I'm going with Radtke, and I'm going with him because everyone saw the fight that he lost to Carlos Braz. He's a monster, he's an animal in that weight class. But Radtke's left hook, straight right are so loose, so snappy, and so quick. A lot of guys in the division, even in the UFC in general, don't throw him like that. He's got fast strikes. His kicks are fast. His punches are fast. They're crisp. They're tight. They got a little snap to him. He turns his body into everything. And he's got good grappling too. He also competes in grappling matches throughout the year as well. So on the ground, and he's winning them. So that he's very solid defensively, offensively. I'm going to have to give the edge to Radtke in this. I've seen some fights of him later rounds. He looks fine cardio-wise. And I think that's what's going to be the difference in this matchup.
Yeah, I flip-flopped on this one throughout the week, but I'm actually going to go with Radtke as well. I for the same reason that Carlos shares. I think his striking is definitely the better out of the two. I think with Mike Malott, he carries a little bit too much size. I think the weight cut's pretty difficult for him, and overall, that's why his cardio gets affected. And I think with Mike Malott that obviously he's a very popular Canadian. He's one of the guys that the Canadian crowd comes to see, and I think the pressure got to him a little bit, and the moment got to him in the Neil Magny fight. He obviously was winning that fight dominantly with his wrestling, and even in the Trevin Giles fight, he didn't necessarily put a stamp on that particular fight in the striking with Giles, and he's just kind of been an almost guy to me, and I can't really trust him just purely because I think if he tries to mix in the wrestling here against Radtke, I think Radtke's takedown defense is good enough to keep the fight standing, and I think over the course of 3 rounds, I think Radtke's going to be trusted here to be able to rip to the body, which I think is going to slow down Mike Malott, especially with the cardio issues he's had in the past. Even in the Trevin Giles fight, Mike Malott, you could tell he was cautious in that fight. He didn't want to overexert himself in case he had, issues with his cardio. And I think he's kind of in his head since that Neil Magny performance. So I think in terms of the pressure he's going to be under inside the Canadian arena here with all of his fans, I think the moment might get a little bit too much for him. And Radtke's dangerous, 3-1 inside the UFC. Like Carlos mentioned, his lone loss is to Carlos Prates, which we can forgive him for. But I think the striking of Radtke here is going to catch him off guard. I think that left hook is very, very nice, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to the body. So give me Charles Radtke here to win a striking exchange and keep the fight on the feet. But I do think Mike Malott's talented. I do think that he is good. It's just very hard to trust, especially as a big favorite. The line is fairly close here, but Radtke is the underdog. But I think that Radtke, he could definitely pull off the upset this week. And next up, we have Benoit Saint-Denis with a replacement opponent in Kyle Prepolec. And I got to say, I'll be honest with you, I was really looking forward to the Joel Alvarez-Benoit Saint-Denis matchup. That was probably one of my favorites. I was very disappointed. I texted Carlos and said that I was disappointed that Joel Alvarez wasn't in this one. But this one's going to be a quick breakdown from me. Benoit Saint-Denis by first round smash, whichever way he wants. Obviously, Benoit Saint-Denis, former Special Forces, fighting out of France. The guy is, an absolute dog, very, very aggressive on the feet. He looks to get fights to the ground where he has good submission, good grappling. The guy is wild on the feet, as you remember from that head kick knockout that he had of Matt Frivola. The guy is just the epitome of toughness we've seen in the Silva fight, where he was absolutely mopped and dropped, beaten. He didn't quit on himself at any point. And just to kind of touch a little bit on Kyle, Kyle taking this fight on about a week's notice. The older fighter, he used to fight in the UFC, but was cut, and he's fought low-level regional scene guys up until this point. And he did get a win in his last fight, but when I watched tape on him, he's just very slow, very plodding. He likes to blast kicks, but they're very telegraphed. He tends to bring his hands down when he throws the kicks as well. And I just think Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be far too much for him. I think whichever way that Saint-Denis wants this fight to go, whether it's on the ground, on the feet, I think he smashes him. First round finish. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I also went with Saint-Denis for the same reasons you did. It's short notice. We've seen Kyle Prepolec in the Prepolec in the UFC before. Lost to some of the guys that weren't on the level as someone like Saint-Denis, and yeah, I mean, I don't see a way for him. I mean, they do call him, what was his nickname again? Killshot.
Yeah.
Kyle Killshot Prepolec, and I'm like, well, he's been knocking out guys on the regional scene, but when he got to the UFC, he didn't quite do the same thing. He didn't put them out either. To be honest with you, Saint Denis, it's got to suck to lose that Alvarez fight because I was looking forward to that one as well. I thought Alvarez was going to give him another loss. That's just me. And I think this is going to be an easy night for Mr. Saint Denis.
Yeah, I think Benoit Saint-Denis will probably find the kill shot here against Kyle and get it done on Saturday. And that brings us to Natália Silva taking on Alexa Grasso. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
All right. There's a huge speed, quickness, anything, whatever, accuracy discrepancy in this matchup. All in favor of Silva. Silva's gone against some girls that are very high-level grapplers, wrestlers, and she's kept herself off the mat. So that's a problem if Grasso wants to take her there. I like Alexa Grasso. I think she's a very tough, very game, very talented. But what gets her to that point is her heart and her drive. She doesn't have the physical abilities that Silva has. Now, does Silva have the heart and drive? We're going to find out because when she goes up against her, we're going to see how this comes out. To me, I think Silva wants it. I think she's talented. I think she works hard. And, she's got some fast kicks. She's got fast hands. Alexa's boxing is good, but defensively, she's like a sitting duck because speed level is, unless she could time it, as soon as Silva's coming in, she catches her with something on the way in or with a takedown, changes levels, something like that. I could see it happening. She's smart. She's got a good fight IQ. She's ready to mix it up so she can get it done. But ultimately, I went with Natália Silva in this one.
Yeah, two for Silva here for me as well. I think the one standout skill set here in the trilogy that she had, Alexa Grasso had with Shevchenko, was the wrestling. Right, we saw in the Noche UFC fight where Alexa lost the belt to Shevchenko. Shevchenko was able to get the wrestling going. She was able to control her on the ground and get really well-timed takedowns. And Silva's shown in the past that she can also mix in the wrestling. I think that's definitely going to be one skill set that Silva wants to use in this matchup. It's definitely something that she probably implement throughout the fight. And I think with Grasso, Carlos is right. I think her boxing is good. I don't necessarily see a whole lot of kicks out of her, but one thing that Silva does also possess in this matchup that I think will be a good factor or a good tool for her to use is the kicks. I think if she stays on the outside, is able to kind of attack the legs, kicks to the body, kicks to the head, I think that can frustrate Grasso and cause her to kind of, get into that range where Silva can counter with her hands. And I also think as well that might cause Alexa to throw shots, blind or naked, which will time the takedowns for Silva here. Silva's looked pretty good. I think that she's definitely going to be the next in line for a title shot if she's able to beat Alexa Grasso here. And I feel confident that she's going to get it done. She's shown a really well-rounded skill set. She's been, not necessarily fighting the creme de la creme in the women's division, but she's looked good doing it all. All the fights have pretty much gone how she wants to. She has good volume, good cardio, good movement, and like Carlos said, I think speed kills, and I think that's what's going to matter on Saturday. So give me Silva in this matchup to win by decision. And next up, we had the legend and Jose Aldo taking on Zahabi. I feel like both of these guys, to be honest with you, I'm surprised that they're not at the age of 40, but I'm going to kick this one off, and I got Jose Aldo, man. I really like Jose Aldo in this style matchup. When I'm watching Amil Zahabi, I really noticed that he's very, very flat-footed. He kind of, not necessarily plodding, but he does put a lot of weight, especially in his lead leg, and I think that's definitely a recipe for disaster here against Aldo with Aldo's legendary calf kicks. I think he needs to attack the calf early and often. I think that'll really help him going with the boxing. And I noticed that Zahabi tends to throw one shot at a time, whereas Aldo throws in combinations. So I think if Aldo's first and third when it comes to the striking exchanges, I think he'll win the boxing, which he's obviously been working on very heavily, taking a lot of boxing fights. And I just want to say as well, Aldo did look good in his last fight against Mario Batista, which if you're new to the Ground and Pound podcast, I did have a nice rant about when we broke down that fight after with the result of Batista getting the win by hugging him against the cage. Jose Aldo, I don't think he's going to have to worry about being hugged against the fence here. I think that his boxing is going to be enough here against Zahabi. I think the calf kicks are going to be there and a great tool for him to use as always, and I don't think that Zahabi's going to be able to get this fight to the ground. Aldo has great takedown defense and always has, and I do think that Zahabi, in his coach, is going to obviously have a good game plan for him coming in, but I just think Aldo's going to have more than one tool that he can use in this style matchup. So give me Jose Aldo to get it done here in Canada. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I did go with Jose Aldo, but Aiemann Zahabi he still has some. He's been laying people out with his right hand. It's heavy. He throws it. He may not throw it a lot. He may not be very active with it, but he definitely finds a home for it somewhere within the fight, whether it's to put somebody out or to back him up, gain some respect in the matchup. That's the one thing that I'm a little worried about is Aldo throwing in combination. He's loving the boxing. He's not usually attacking the lead leg. I know you mentioned that earlier. He hasn't been doing that for the last, I don't know how many years. Doesn't even really go with calf kicks too much now. The only thing that worries me is he throws in combinations, but his combinations are kind of blind. Like if he hits somebody to the body, he doesn't wait for their reaction. He's already ready to go upstairs to the head, come back to the body, change an angle, throw right in. Zahabi could find the space in between that to throw that right hand. Do I think he's going to? I think it'd be better if he doesn't. I think he needs to stay defensively sound. But I do believe that Jose is going to do enough to get this done. Does he put him out? I don't think so. but I do believe that he's going to have enough volume. He's going to do enough damage. And I would love to see Aldo go back to those lead leg kicks again, just attacking the lead leg of his opponent. Because if he did, I think he'd still be a champion right now. Beautiful takedown defense, great combinations with boxing. And if he just ripped the leg more, I would absolutely love it. But I'm still taking you, Aldo, at 38. I think you're a monster. And he's so much faster than Zahabi, too. It's going to be hard for him to see everything coming.
Yeah, for sure. No, you made a good. I think your breakdown of both guys there actually is spot on. I definitely do think that Aldo needs to go back to the calf. It is a good point that you made. He has kind of moved away from the calf, and I think that that's definitely going to be open here against Zahabi. But I'm rooting for Aldo, man. After that last performance and that last kind of bullshit decision that he got against Batista, I'm still salty about it. So hopefully he gets the win here. I'd like to see him get a knockout. And that brings us to the co-main event, ladies and gentlemen, for UFC 315. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button here for the content on the Ground and Pound podcast. And I'm going to let Carlos break this one down here in the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko taking on Manon Fiorot. And who do you have in this title bout?
I got to go with Valentina in this one. Shevchenko's solid. She's going to stand with Manon Fiorot in the first round. Maybe second. And this is just me at 37 years old. I mean, Fiorot's at 35, so the age difference isn't that wide. But when she stands with her for a little bit, Fiorot's got a lot of movement. She's got a lot of blitzing that she does and throws punches and kicks, and she comes right at you. And I think it's going to be a little too fast for Shevchenko. Now, Manon Fiorot also has a very good takedown defense. She's able to stay off the mat. And that's where I think the problem is going to be. Shevchenko has got the ability to get anybody down with her wrestling. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's not even very technical. She just kind of bullies you to the ground. She'll get waist lock and then just brute force, brute strength, whatever you want to call it. She will just take a girl right down and hold her there. And she's done that to every opponent, good grapplers, good wrestlers, and I don't think it's going to be any different against Manon Fiorot. I think that Shevchenko is, to me, she should probably just do that from start to finish. But I think she's going to play around with the striking, see what Fiorot has to do, and if she has to go to that next level, because it is more tiring on the body, a little bit more taxing to keep wrestling all the time. But she finds a way to do it. Her cardio's there. And I think she's gonna end up saying, I have to take this down to get the victory.
Yeah, Carlos makes a lot of great points. I share the same sentiment here as Carlos, and I'm just going to start off by saying Valentina Shevchenko, dog of the week. There's absolutely no way that Valentina Shevchenko at 24-4 with two of her losses coming to Amanda Nunes, one slip-up performance against Alexa Grasso, which she was able to get back, that she should be the underdog in this matchup. I understand that Manon Fiorot is a very skilled karate fighter, great stand-up, has good power. She's looked good inside the UFC. But she opened Fiorot as the underdog, and people have been betting her to the favorite. I'm going the other way. We're fading the public in this one. Shevchenko, as Carlos mentioned, mixed in the grappling in her last fight against Alexa Grasso. And like Carlos said, it is taxing on the body to implement that much wrestling. Her cardio looked great. She still was able to get takedowns late in that fight and really frustrate Alexa Grasso. And Carlos, one thing I do have to kind of disagree somewhat is obviously Fiorot's had good takedown defense, but I don't necessarily think that she's, had a good enough wrestler to actually really implement a wrestle-heavy game plan. And I think Shevchenko does have the wrestling to be able to get her to the ground. And I look through a lot of Fiorot's fights, like when she fought Erin Blanchfield. Blanchfield, talented grappler, but not necessarily the best wrestling. Whereas I think Shevchenko here, I think once she does get this fight to the ground, she can beat her up on the ground, wear her down. And I think that Fiorot has a lot of power in the hands. She does have nice kicks, but I think people are assuming that, because Shevchenko is older, 37, hasn't looked good against women like Tyler Santos, was able to out-grapple her. Who was the other fight that she had with Alexa Grasso where she was submitted? I think people are looking at that performance and saying, well, Shevchenko's kind of on the decline. Fiorot is, the new breed, the upcoming. But Fiorot is, like Carlos mentioned, is 35 herself. So if this was a 28-year-old Manon Fiorot, I'd say, yeah, maybe, the younger fighter, better cardio, more youthful, hungry. But Fiorot is 35 herself, so I don't think the age is going to play a factor here. I think Shevchenko is way more well-rounded. I think she has the wrestling in her back pocket, and I actually think on the feet that Shevchenko is something like a 10-time, 11-time Muay Thai world champion or kickboxing world champion, whatever it is. Manon Fiorot is a decorated striker, but not to the level of Shevchenko. So even if you want to talk about the striking, I think the knees, the elbows of Shevchenko here are going to be tools that she can use. I think she's far more well-rounded. I think she has far more tools. Give me Shevchenko, dog of the week. There's no way she should be an underdog here, and I believe she gets it done and gets us back on track for dog of the week. And that brings us to the main event for UFC 315. We have Belal Muhammad taking on Jack Della Maddalena. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button because Carlos is going to tell us who he's got in the main event.
I feel like I want to change my mind, but I don't. I just think of all the good things that JDM can do, but I'm sticking with Belal Muhammad. Now, the reason why I said it's going to change my mind is this. Against Gilbert Burns, who had a very wrestle-heavy game plan against JDM. What happened was he waited till the last round, which was, I think it was a 3-round fight, waited till the last round. For the last minute, he was able to get up, create some space, got up, and then he just unloaded, okay? And he's got good, heavy, snapping punches, good movement, and he just had that, I need to win this fight, because he knew he was down. Okay, and he got it done. Now, yes, he had I don't want to say aged Gilbert Burns, but he's been in some wars. You know what I mean? But when it comes to Belal Muhammad, I don't know if he has. Belal Muhammad has a good chin. I just don't know if he has that pop to get him out of there. If he has to, you know what I mean? Because Belal Muhammad he's going to get him down. Gilbert Burns got him down fairly easy. You know what I mean? So it's Belal Muhammad's going to get him down. And when he gets him down, he's going to control him. And the thing is he's going to strike with him on the feet to mix it up so that the JDM does not see that takedown coming. And if he thinks he's going to get back up that much, that quickly, like he did against Gilbert Burns, Belal Muhammad can smother you on the ground. So I love what JDM can do. I think he's a very talented fighter. And does he deserve to be champ? At some point, yes. I think he's got good movement. He's got good defensive wrestling. To get back up, for some reason, he just goes down. And I think he's got some heavy strikes. I like to see him mix in a lot more kicks and knees and everything. He does mix in knees, but it's very rare. He's very in love with the hands, and the hands have done him good so far. So I'm not saying anything bad about them, but what I am saying is I'd love to see him have a little bit more variety. I just don't see a way that he gets by Belal's wrestling, and that's the problem is that top heavy pressure from Muhammad. I got to go with that.
Yeah, I've always been I don't want to say a hater of Jack Della Maddalena, but I've always noticed the one glaring hole in his game is his takedown defense, and that's actually why I picked him bet Gilbert Burns in that matchup. And as Carlos mentioned, Jack Della Maddalena was losing that fight even on the judges' scorecards. Burns was up 2-0. When Gilbert Burns shot and re-entried on his shot, he got hit by a knee. Jack was able to get him out of there, and I think even Gilbert Burns was kind of disappointed in that performance as he knew he was up on the scorecards. But like Carlos said, Burns was able to get him down, not necessarily with ease. He had to work through the grappling, grappling and go through the proper procedure to get him down to the ground. But with a guy like Belal Muhammad, man, I mean, he looked fantastic against Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards has had, over the course of his career has had fantastic takedown defense, and Belal made it look really easy. He dumped him on his head multiple times. That fight was at 5 a.m. or whatever it was UK time. You can argue and say that that's why Leon didn't look great in that matchup, but Belal had to fight in that same conditions, and he looked good. And I got to admit, he honestly looked the best that he's ever looked in that matchup. And one of the things that I like about Belal is I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate from trolls online, people talking shit about the fact that he goes to decisions. But Belal's tough, man. I think that he's got his boxing's always improving. It's enough for him to pressure to set up his takedowns. It's not like he's just a wrestler. I think the hands are improving enough to the point where he's feasible on the feet, which allows him to set up those takedowns. And I think with the entries that he has and the wrestling that he has, like Carlos mentioned, the top control, I think that's what it's going to need here to take down Jack Della Maddalena and ultimately win himself another decision here. But I think that he's going to try and win a by finish late after he's worn down Jack Della Maddalena. We've seen in the past where even against Basil Hafez that Jack Della Maddalena struggled with the takedowns and was in precarious positions on the ground. So what do people think is going to happen with Belal Muhammad when he gets him down? So I think Belal Muhammad might look for a submission on the ground late, maybe rounds 4 and 5. I think he's going to go out there and try and prove the haters wrong and get a late finish. And my only real concern here is two things that I've seen online, which have got me a little bit spooked with picking Belal Muhammad. Is Belal's talking about, my hands are like Canelo. I'm not going to shoot any takedowns. You know, I'm just going to show him what my hands are all about. I think that's just him trolling and just having fun. I hope he doesn't do that. I hope he does mix in his grappling, which I think he will. I think he's just trolling. And the other thing that worries me is Jack does rip to the body very well. And I hope that, you know, Belal's cardio and his ability to push a pace isn't affected by Jack going to the body early. He does rip to the body very nicely. And I just wanted to mention just before I wrap things up that Belal Muhammad is during Ramadan here. He has talked about on the UFC countdown that he is during Ramadan. He is fasting right now for his training. But I'm going to kind of call bogus on that because we just saw Ankalaev look great against Alex, and there was a lot of speculation about him during Ramadan, and he's not necessarily even known for his cardio. Belal is known for cardio and pace and pressure, so give me Belal Muhammad here. I think it's going to be enough with the takedowns to get it done here, and I think he proves people wrong, and I think people will remember the name on Saturday. And coming up on the channel, guys, like Carlos already is aware, we did the full card breakdown for PFL Europe. Hughes taking on Miranda. Check that out on the channel. That will be live at the same time as this video. And before we wrap things up, Carlos, do you have anything you want to say to the people?
I just want to say, everybody, remember to like and subscribe. And to the Canadian fans out there, especially Jasudavicius, you know what happens when you teach somebody like a little kid a bad word, they always want to say it. So I'll say it again. Let's get it done, Jasudavicius, double deck. And maybe we'll grab some poutine sometime.
Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.